Let's break down Fast and Furious. The first movie, a street racing film with cool cars, nitrous, and a whole lot of muscle. It was basically Need for Speed but with actors. And sure, it had a decent plot where Paul Walker's character, Brian, was going undercover in the street racing world. He joins a group of criminals led by Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel. And the whole thing's about winning races and stealing DVDs, because that's how we roll in the early 2000s, right? But what happens next? The franchise completely goes off the rails, in the best way possible. Let me hit you with the first secret word. It's nitro. Remember that. It's important, like all of Vin Diesel's family speeches. But I'll get to that. By the time we hit the second movie, Too Fast, Too Furious, the whole thing turns into a buddy cop flick, and Brian is back doing what he does best. Getting into trouble, but looking cool as hell while doing it. Now, this movie's legendary because it's not about the cars anymore. Oh no! This time, it's about the drugs, the money, and the cops, and we're still getting cars that do impossible stuff like drifting on a straight road without even touching the brakes. Classic. Then we get to Fast and Furious 3, or as I like to call it, Tokyo Drift. It's the first film in the franchise where nobody cares about the original crew. Except for Vin Diesel, who comes back for a 2-minute cameo just so we don't forget what family is. And here's the thing, every single action scene in this movie could be solved by simply not going 200 miles per hour around corners. Just a thought. But nah, we're here for chaos. And we love it. Now let's talk about how the franchise gets bigger. By the time we hit Fast and Furious 4, we're not just stealing cars, we're stealing nuclear devices, and by Fast 5, we're robbing banks with cars, because apparently, cars are now the best method of transporting millions of dollars. In fact, forget about logic. We have cars that fly through buildings like they're trying to break the sound barrier. And if there's a building, you drive through it, just like every superhero flick, except there are no capes, just loud engines. Now, Fast and Furious 6 comes out, and this is where things really get ridiculous. We're talking high-speed chases in tankers, fighting bad guys on airplanes, and doing things that your mom told you never to do in a parking lot, i.e. turning your car into a weapon. And by Fast and Furious 7, we're jumping cars between buildings in Dubai. Oh, and by the way, let's not forget Paul Walker's death, which made the franchise a tearjerker. They had to finish the movie without him, and they gave us one of the most emotional goodbyes ever. But seriously, this is a movie that takes it to a new level of crazy, and I respect it. So what's next? By the time we hit Fast and Furious 8, or The Fate of the Furious, the movie's basically a heist, a family reunion, and a ridiculous action movie all in one. Vin Diesel is now fighting Charlize Theron because why not? In a game of who's more insane. And let's not forget the cars in Fast 8. They drive themselves. Seriously, cars are now like self-aware robots that can hack into systems and follow people on their own. I'm just waiting for the Fast and Furious 9 to have a scene where a car lands on Mars and brings back the famous Toretto car from the Fast and Furious moon mission. At this point, who cares about logic? This franchise is about family, and by family I mean cars, explosions, and Vin Diesel's smile. This is where you get those iconic quotes, "I don't have friends, I got family," said by a man who would crash a car into an airplane to save his sister. It's not just a movie anymore, it's a lifestyle. Okay, now let me hit you with the second secret word. Ready? It's Toretto. Remember, you can't win both, so drop a comment for the first word and the second. Stay sharp, folks. And speaking of family, let's talk about the real family in this movie, the cars. By Fast and Furious 10, it's rumored that Toretto's going to drive a car into the sun or on top of a mountain. There's no way these guys aren't going to space. If the next film doesn't end with a car on the moon, I'll be disappointed. Now, here's the kicker. Imagine if Fast and Furious wasn't about cars and wasn't about family. Imagine they just turned it into a fast food franchise. Picture this. Toretto's Fast and Furious Grill. What are they serving? Turbo fries with nitro sauce, and a car-sized burger with a side of family because no one eats alone. And you know Vin Diesel's going to be the mascot. You can't tell me he wouldn't sell the world's most ridiculous meal while looking dead serious. So here we are, waiting for Fast and Furious 10 to somehow involve robots and space travel. If you're still with me, I've got one last word for you. The final secret word, here it is, race. Get ready to comment that, and let's see who's paying attention. To wrap up, Fast and Furious is a glorious mess of action, cars, explosions, and family and no logic whatsoever. But it's the perfect guilty pleasure movie. You're not here for realism. You're here to watch cars defy physics and still somehow survive without a scratch. And you know what? That's exactly why we keep coming back.